You are listening to the Motherhood Unstressed podcast, and I'm your host, Liz Carlile. Welcome back. Welcome to a new week. I'm so glad that you're here and that we're spending this time together. And this is a topic that is pretty heavy. I think you knew that when you hit play. We're talking about grief and that process and going through that process and what it takes, and really just acknowledging how truly difficult it is. And I wanted to have a conversation like this after reading my guest's book. It was incredible. It's called The Way Through the Woods, and it's all about her journey and healing after the loss of her husband. And interestingly enough, she was always a writer. She was an anthropologist, but she never wrote about this type of stuff. She never wrote about herself. And it was when she went through that grieving process and her story that this book came to be. And when I found it, I fell in love with it and said, I have to have her on the show to talk about this. And so we do. We talk about what happened to her, and really more importantly, and I think most beneficial to you, is what she did emotionally and mentally to get through that period. And so my hope is that if you are going through something, you hear this and you are uplifted and you are given hope and you are given actual strategies. And as she says, everyone grieves differently. But what she shares is absolutely powerful, and I think will help you no matter what stage of grief you are in. And if you're not in any stage of grief, that's great too. But to have these tools in the back of your mind for if and when that does happen, I think is crucial. So without further ado, please enjoy my episode with Long Litt Woon. This episode is sponsored by Motherhood Unstressed CBD. If you didn't already know, yes, I have a CBD line. I know there are a lot of lines out there, but when I created mine, I had the mother in mind. I wanted her to be able to access the healing power of cannabis, the cleanest, most organic version at the lowest cost. And I think that I've done that. And that's why we're still around after several years, despite the market being absolutely flooded. We are completely organic. We are USA grown. We are sustainably sourced. And the stories from my clients out there who have tried it have really buoyed my spirit and created just this amazing community around the line. So pick up yours today at motherhoodunstressed.com and use the code BUCKHEAD to save. Hello, Woon. Welcome to the show. I am so honored that you're here. I loved you. I sped through your book. I loved it. It was so touching and real and authentic, and taught me a lot about mushrooms, which I don't know how you combine all of those things into one book. It's very strange. So welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Liz. Thank you for having me on your show.
Yeah, so diving right in, talk to us about how this book came to be. Obviously it came out of a very hard time in your life, but did you know when you started writing it that it would be what it is today?
No, definitely I did not. The book came about organically, which is fine since you're talking about nature writing. And yes, it all started when I lost my husband very suddenly and was in a very dark place, and by chance stumbled upon this mushrooming for beginners course, amongst many other things which I tried to soothe myself and relieve my pain. But anyway, the mushroom course did it because it really got me engaged with life again, very generally. And since I'm an anthropologist, I was also fascinated by the people I met, this strange tribe of mushroom collectors, first in Norway, but then other parts of the world too, and they do share some similarities, so it's like they share a culture. So I thought, okay, maybe this could be interesting as a book, because I started telling my friends about it and they were very encouraging. I do not know whether it was because they were just happy that I was sort of like feeling better now, or whether they thought that this could be a book. But anyway, so I started writing a book, a very quirky, personal book about mushrooming, about mushroom people. And actually, I got a grant to write that. So I knew then that it was not completely crazy, this idea I had. But then halfway through writing the book, I was wondering, where am I going to put my husband in the book? Because the loss of my husband, because for me, in my mind, I mean, these two very disparate themes are connected, mushrooms and mourning. So I thought, okay, maybe I'll just write a line in the preface or something like that. But the minute I started writing about the loss of him, I knew that this book had two stories. There's this outer journey, my journey into the kingdom of fungi, because it is its own kingdom, and this inner journey in this landscape of grief. And the book is about how I go into the forest and come out of my grief.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I got chills when you were talking because that's really what comes across in the pages. I didn't really know what to expect when I started it, but from page 1, I was engaged. I mean, it read like a novel, and you so clearly describe your grief and the shock of losing him so young. Were you surprised, when you did find this group and you were in the woods, how healing that was going to be? Did you expect it to be so transformative?
No, definitely not. Definitely not. Like I mentioned, I did a bunch of other things too, yoga, meditation, anything anybody suggested, I did it because I was desperate, I was desperate to find some relief, So I certainly didn't know that this was going to happen with out in nature with the mushrooms. But of course, thinking back, it seems all now very logical and obvious, but I didn't know then.
Yeah. Was there a time when you were out in the woods where you suddenly felt lighter, or like a little bit of that weight of the grief had kind of fallen off? I mean, do you remember that moment, or was it kind of a...
No, it was very gradual. It was very gradual because I described this moment that you're talking about at the end of the book, and it was certainly not out in the woods where that happened, but mushroom by mushroom, step by step, that was what was happening to me. Yeah. And I certainly did feel that, I felt that this is what I need to do because this was the only light in my life, So even though I didn't know what was happening, I knew that, well, at least this is okay, keep doing this, Yeah. So it was more like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I thought it was interesting that all of the tribe of the people, the mushroomers, they kind of leave their personal lives outside. And when they get together, it's all about mushrooms. So is that kind of a critical part in your healing as well? Because you didn't really have to talk about what you had been through, what you were going through. You could really just focus in on the science and the searching.
Of course, now I'm talking, mushroom people come in many shapes and sizes, okay? Now I'm talking
like
about
mushrooms.
Yeah, good one. So of course, I met the people I talk about in the book are mostly the hardcore mushroomers, okay? So for these people, definitely they leave everything, in the car before you get into the forest, right? And then, because of course among my friends I was the widow, and here a lot of people I didn't talk about my husband. They didn't know that what had happened. They didn't know, what I did otherwise, people are just, like you said, just into the mushrooms.
Yeah, right. I'm curious though, when you were out there in the woods, was there ever a time where you were thinking, or feeling that your husband was with you?
Well, I feel that he's with me all the time. So, I mean, in various ways. So, of course, when I grieved, I mean, grieving is very different from person to person. But it was like in the beginning, actually, in the book, what I'm talking about is a phase which I would call now acute grief. This is like immediately after he dies, right? So, of course, now it's been so many years now. I don't think about him in the same way. It doesn't mean he's gone away or whatever, but I don't think he doesn't. I don't think about him 24/7. Put it that way. And at that time, I certainly did, and it was like not just 24/7, but 24/7 of hours, of missing him. It's like the in Brazil, they have this wonderful concept which they call saudade. It means the presence of absence. You know, so it's there all the time. The absence. Yeah.
Yeah. Like forcing yourself to breathe and to eat and to do what you need to do because it's so heavy. That's incredible. So what are some of the most memorable responses that you've gotten from readers? I mean, when you were writing the book, was it really just to process your own story and grief, or did you have an idea of this is who I want to write this book for?
Well, to tell you the truth, when I was writing, I didn't think about any readers at all. I was not even thinking about processing my grief. I was just thinking about writing the book. I didn't think about it. You know, I was just going to write this book, you know. I mean, I didn't know if it was going to be a book. I just was writing this, you know. So all this has come afterwards, you know. Yeah.
That's amazing. So has anyone reached out, people who have read your book and just said, God, thank you.
So many, so many. All over the world, you know, because it's translated into 15 languages. So, you know, so many people respond. But in different ways, you know, because people come to the book from different angles. Of course, the obvious one is the mushroom or the mourning. But people come to it, but it is also a story. I mean, it's a narrative that people come to it, you know, for different reasons, you know. I mean, it is a book about, actually, you know, it is actually a book about love, and it is a book about life, you know, that's so general and so huge, you know, it can reach anybody, you know.
Yeah.
But of course, the obvious candidates, you know, the obvious readers are these two big groups, you know.
Yeah. I mean, and to be frank with you, I mean, that's why I picked it up. I love the cover art. I think it's so beautiful. Even your name was so beautiful to me. And then the mushroom thing, because I've been obsessed with mushrooms for a long time. I drink it in my coffee. And so, like I said before, as I was reading it, I was really blown away, because I think when you pick up a book and you're like, okay, I'm going to learn about mushrooms or learn more about it, you don't expect to be touched on an emotional level the way that you write. Have you always been someone who could write so clearly about emotions and feelings? I mean, I think it's a very rare thing.
Well, thank you very much, Liz. But I mean, I've written all my working life, but in the opposite genre.
You're an academic.
So, yeah, and I've had a column in the newspaper where I write about politics and society. So the whole point there was to be like objective and to be rational and logical and have arguments. So I've never written like this before. So this is just, it came out of my grief. It really did. Yeah. And it came out of this awakening, you know, the way the mushrooms woke me up, you know, my senses, which I write a lot about. So this writing came out of that whole process. Yeah.
Yeah. So for the woman listening to this who might be going through something really difficult, trying to process, what would you recommend? You know, short of joining a mushroom foraging course, what are some healthy outlets that she can choose like you did?
Well, as I said previously, grief is very different from person to person, and one just needs to look for, you know, find one's own mushroom. So maybe what one needs to do is to be open to whatever comes your way. Because basically, when you are in the midst of this, you just want to lie down on your, you know, you don't want to do anything. Mm-hmm. You don't want to go out. You don't want to eat. You don't want to meet people. So in a way, you know, just be open to all the suggestions that come in and try to do something. Maybe one of this could work for you. Yeah. Could be, you know, stamp collecting. It could be anything. It could be something you've done before, or it could be something completely new. For me, of course, I mean, the advantage of doing something new is that you sort of like you see the world in a new way, and basically because this book is about loss and managing loss. And it could be any kind of loss, right? I mean, loss of someone you love, or loss of a job, loss of health, loss of anything. So it's about dealing with a crisis that involves loss, that is so central to your person, your identity, that in order to move forward, you have to, in a way, redefine that identity. Yeah. And that's a huge job. So the advantage of doing something new, as opposed to something you have just dabbled with before, is that it would, shine the light in different ways. It will show you something. It will show you the world in a new way. And right. So be open, go into that new space. Maybe it could be something for you.
Yeah. I think that's so beautiful. Exactly. Because essentially you're not the same person when you lose a job or a person or, part of your identity. And so choosing something new like that is in alignment with that. I mean, you are moving into this new space. And the alternative, being stagnant and not growing is tragic. So when this was all done and the book was done, did you feel like a new person, like you were a different Woon?
Well, actually, it's still happening, because basically what's going on right now is, I'm going all over the place talking about my book. And every time I talk about my book, someone would, inevitably come up with a new question that I have not been asked before, or even thought of before. And then suddenly some little element, falls into place. So this whole process of healing is still continuing in a way, yeah. So that's the big surprise, because, a lot of people ask me, oh, was it healing to journal, to write? I didn't think about it when I did it, but definitely when I look back, I mean, that has been one of the effects. But the thing that surprised me was, how this effect is still going on. Mm-hmm. Because even after the book has come out, and been published, because people are still reading it, and people, respond.
Yeah. And for years to come, I mean, this will be, touching people's lives who are going through things, I'm sure of it. So yeah, you've talked about surprises and how you've come out on the other side. Is there any great takeaway that you want to leave the listener with, on grief, on healing, anything in that vein?
Okay, when I was in the midst of this, I couldn't imagine I would ever be happy again. I could not imagine what could make me happy. It was just impossible to see. Actually, I couldn't even think about this project, even about being happy. I mean, it's like, I couldn't ask that question, what could make me happy, because you're just in that very dark space. Mm-hmm. So I suppose after coming out of this tunnel, I know that it's possible. And I think that it must be possible for everyone, because death is part of life, loss is part of life. People go on, this has been going on for ages. But of course, we're in the midst of it. It's almost impossible to imagine what it could look like. But just to know, maybe intellectually, that could be some kind of straw you could hang on to, that this will take time, effort, luck, a lot of stuff, but there is light at the end of the tunnel.
I love that. And so what's next for you? What new projects are on the horizon? I mean, is it just all book, or do you have other projects in mind?
No, it's book. So now I've become an author,
Well,
I'm an author now. I've got one book published. It's translated into many languages. I'm being invited to all sorts of literary events, and I'm writing my second book.
Oh, can you share anything about what that's going to be about yet?
I can just say that there's not a single mushroom in it. Or maybe just one.
I am curious, what is your favorite mushroom and why?
Yeah, okay. My favorite mushroom would be, I think, the true morel, which is just incredible in my mind. And And also maybe because in Norway it's very rare. It's very difficult to find. I know in the States that there are some states where, they have like mushroom morel festivals and stuff. Like, it just sounds crazy.
Abundance.
But yeah, I mean, I've never experienced that. That would be amazing. Yeah. But so that is my favorite favorite mushroom, the true morel. Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, so we are to the point in the interview where I have some rapid fire questions, if you're ready.
Yep.
Grief is
loving, isn't it? It is part of love.
I'm grateful for.
I'm grateful for. In fact, actually, everything that would just happen, even the stuff that is difficult, I mean, it's sort of like everything teaches you something.
Mm-hmm. And lastly, what's something that you've learned in life that you wish someone would have told you earlier on?
Oh, what I said earlier to you, that, even when things are very, very difficult and when it's impossible to see or even imagine that things could be better, there is light at the end of the tunnel.
I love that. That's so powerful. For anyone listening to this right now, we're all going through things. We've all been through things. Yeah. That message is everything. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So where can people find you online, find your book? Tell us all the things.
Okay, I'm on all social media. So if you just type in my name, Long Litt Woon, or just mushrooms and mourning, that's easier, you'll find me. And I'm happy to respond. I'm always happy to chat with my readers, please find me.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the work that you've released into the world. Thank you for the work that you're continuing to do. I know a book tour and all of these things, that's exhausting, but I think it's really important, and we need more messages like the one that you're putting out. We really all do. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Liz, for having me.
You have been listening to the Motherhood Unstressed podcast, and I'm your host, Liz Carlile. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you love this episode, please share it out with a friend or on social media. Please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. You just have to hit those 5 stars. You don't even have to write anything. And as always, make sure that you're subscribed so that you never miss a guided meditation every Wednesday or every Monday, an interview with an amazing guest doing amazing work in the world.